Hello. How tracking my wife's affection in a spreadsheet helped me heal childhood trauma and face the truth about my marriage. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and my wife, Megan, is 43. We've been together for 16 years, married for 7, and we have a 4-year-old daughter. At the start of our relationship, Megan was incredibly kind, loving, and affectionate. She'd always be present with me, offering hugs, kisses, and sweet words that made me feel cared for. But over the years, all that has changed. These days, I barely get a kiss from her, let alone a hug or a kind word. She doesn't even ask me how I'm doing in the morning or bother to say good morning or good night. It's gotten to the point where I feel worn out, emotionally drained. I've told her, in every way I can think of, that as a man, I need to feel loved through those little gestures, affection, connection, the small things that show you care. But every time, she brushes it off, saying she's too stressed because of our daughter. The thing is, this lack of affection started long before our daughter was even born. She also tells me it's because of how I act toward her. Apparently, it's always about me. And when we argue about it, she claims I'm overreacting. About a year ago, I got so fed up with this cycle of arguing that I started keeping a diary. I wanted to document her acts of affection, or lack thereof, over the past month. I know it sounds extreme, but I was desperate to show her how little she shows me love. Honestly, I feel so empty that I didn't know what else to do. And now I'm wondering, for those of you in happy marriages, deeply in love with your spouses, is it normal to go weeks without affection? Because I can't believe this is how it's supposed to be. Strangely enough, our sex life is fine, we're intimate 2 to 3 times a week, and sometimes she even initiates it. But that's not enough for me. I need to feel loved outside the bedroom too. And I've realized that living like this for years has broken something in me. I've tried to be patient, to wait for her to understand, but it's killing me. I'm a romantic, passionate guy. I love giving hugs, kisses, compliments, and surprises. I'm the kind of man who can have deep conversations and handle disagreements calmly. But when I don't get anything in return, I shut down. I withdraw because the lack of reciprocity hurts too much. At this point, I've seriously started thinking about divorce. I feel like Megan doesn't hear me, doesn't understand me, and certainly doesn't take any action to change. And just for the record, I'm not looking for a mother. I've been fully independent before I can handle the cooking, cleaning, parenting, and everything else. It's not about chores or responsibilities, we split those evenly. It's about the emotional connection that's been missing for so long. It's frustrating because we go in circles. I don't get the affection I need, so I get hurt and shut down. Megan says my shutting down hurts her, and we fight. She'll yell, call me names, and sometimes even threaten divorce. Then, we'll end up in a place where I'm the one apologizing and trying to move forward, but nothing ever really changes. I even stopped stonewalling because I learned how damaging it can be, but it's still so hard to deal with the lack of love and warmth. The truth is, these fights leave me feeling destroyed. I've been yelled at, insulted, and hurt in ways I never thought possible in a marriage. And yet, I try to keep loving her. I tell her she's beautiful, I buy her favorite soda when I'm at the store, I take care of her when she's sick, and I try to make her laugh. But do I feel loved back? Not even close. What really confuses me is that it wasn't always like this. In the first few years, she gave me everything I needed: affection, love, attention. So what changed? I know she had a tough childhood. Her dad was abusive, he'd hit her mom, call her names, and cheat. I think her mom showed her love, but she never got that from her dad. Maybe that's part of why she's this way now. But if that's the case, how was she able to give me what I needed in the early years? Was it just because the relationship was new? I even asked her about her previous relationships. She told me her exes never complained about these things, that she gave them hugs and affection just fine. But those guys were much older than her, and I can't help but wonder if there was some kind of manipulation there that I missed. I was just 18 when we met, and she had more relationship experience than I did. Maybe I was too young and naive to see what was really going on. Back when Megan and I first got together, I was 18, and she was 27. Looking back, People have asked me why a beautiful, accomplished woman in her late 20s would pursue someone so much younger, like me. But honestly, it wasn't like she was out looking for me specifically. We met in a chat room back in the early days of the internet. We just started talking, and over time, our connection grew. At first, she was skeptical about taking me seriously because of the age gap, but eventually, we met in person, fell for each other, and got engaged. Even now, I've started wondering if that age gap plays a bigger role in our struggles than I initially thought. Some people have suggested that older men might have seen something about Megan, like her lack of affection or difficulty with long-term commitment, that they didn't want to deal with. Maybe that's why those relationships didn't last. And to be honest, I've started questioning if Megan's lack of respect for me might also stem from the age difference. I sometimes feel like she looks down on me, even after all these years. When I think about it, though, I wasn't your typical 18-year-old back then. I had already been through a lot in life, and I'd say I was more mature than most guys my age. On the flip side, maybe Megan was less mature for her age, which is why we clicked in the first place. But that still doesn't explain why her 2 previous relationships were with men 3 or 4 years older than her. Did those guys notice the same issues I'm dealing with now? Did they see something I couldn't see because I was young and, frankly, inexperienced? A couple of months ago, I decided to test myself to see if I was the problem in all this. I treated Megan like a queen for 2 straight weeks, no arguments, no sulking, no frustration. I showered her with love, compliments, and attention. I told her how much I adored her, how beautiful she is, and how sexy she looks. I hugged her, kissed her, and poured my heart into making her feel special. And what did I get in return? 2 compliments and 1 I love you in 2 weeks. That's it. After that, I couldn't keep going, it hurt too much to feel so unreciprocated. I told myself I wouldn't try that experiment again. Then, just a few days ago, I stumbled upon some videos and articles that changed everything. I was scrolling through YouTube and reading online when I discovered something called the avoidant attachment style. As I read through the characteristics, I was shocked at how much Megan seemed to fit the description. I dove deep into researching this attachment style and began piecing things together. It started to make sense: her distant behavior, her lack of affection, her emotional walls, all of it seemed tied to her traumatic childhood. The next day, I showed Megan the Excel sheet where I had been tracking her expressions of affection. Her immediate reaction was, "But we cuddled yesterday." I told her, "Sure, but look at the bigger picture over the past month. The things you do are rare, and when they happen, it's only after I've brought it up in an argument. These aren't opinions, they're facts." Then I explained what I had learned about avoidant attachment styles and how they often develop from childhood trauma. I tied it to her personal story, her father's abuse, and the toxic environment she grew up in. She was visibly stunned. For the first time, she really listened. Then she asked, "So, what do I need to do to fix this?" I told her, "I honestly don't know. What I do know is that this didn't start with us, it began in your childhood, and it needs to be addressed now. Unfortunately, with our hectic schedules, therapy isn't an option right now. I've been researching alternatives, like online courses and self-help books, to figure out how I can work on my own issues first. I've realized I've developed an anxious attachment style myself, and I need to focus on healing that." Megan's response was, "I understand. Don't worry, I know what I need to do to give you what you need. I don't need a course or anything. But I can't help having serious doubts about that. For now, I'm continuing to track everything in my diary. It's not about emotions, it's about facts. If things don't change, I've already told her I'll have no choice but to file for divorce. And if it comes to that, it'll be final, I won't go back. In the meantime, I'm following some great advice I've received online. I've been setting boundaries, clearly stating my needs, and standing firm on what I will and won't tolerate. I'll keep you updated on how things go from here. I've decided to give it one last week to see how things play out. Honestly, I don't expect much. If I had to guess, Megan won't last more than 3 days before slipping back into her usual ways, actually, probably just 1. But it doesn't matter anymore. I've come to terms with what needs to be done. Right now, I'm focusing on healing myself, getting stronger, and preparing for a fresh start when the time comes. I've already started looking into lawyers to make sure everything is in order for the day I decide to file for divorce. In the meantime, I've been digging deep into my own issues. I made a list of all the insecurities and trauma I've been carrying since childhood. There's a lot to unpack, and I've realized I've got my fair share of things to work on. Out of curiosity, I asked Megan what she thought were the top 3 things I needed to fix about myself. Honestly, I expected her to rattle off a laundry list. But instead, she only mentioned 2 things: defensiveness and stonewalling. She even told me that if I fixed those, I'd be a perfect husband. That threw me for a loop. If I'm supposedly so close to perfection, why am I the one constantly feeling unloved and unseen? I asked her if fixing those 2 things would make her love me more, and she said, "No, I already love you the way you are. This is just your cross to bear." Hearing that broke something in me. She seems content with the way things are, but I'm not. I want more from a marriage at the very least, the kind of basic care and affection you'd expect from a spouse. So now, I've made up my mind. I'm done chasing after her for scraps of love. I've given all I have to this relationship, and I'm left feeling empty. I've cried every day since making this decision, trying to process the heartbreak and prepare myself for what's coming. The chance of her changing is slim to none, less than 1%, if I'm being generous. Our issues run too deep, rooted in years of unresolved trauma on both sides. I've bent over backward to make her happy, adapted to her way of being, and begged for her attention, but it's never been enough. Megan was my first love. I adored her with everything I had. I wanted her to see how much I loved her, to feel it and reciprocate. But every small attempt to connect with her seems to get swallowed up in this endless void. I've reached the point where I have to accept that this is who she is and that she can't give me what I need. Over the years, I've tried so hard to connect with her, to create moments of affection and closeness. I remember during the pandemic, I tried spending more time with her, but it was like pulling teeth. I'd work all day, play video games late into the night, and sometimes we'd watch a movie together, though she'd almost always fall asleep halfway through. I felt like I was living alone, even though she was physically there. There was this one time when a mutual friend of ours said he was logging off from a game because his girlfriend wanted to spend time with him. I remember thinking, I want that. I want my wife to want to spend time with me. I tried suggesting similar things, but it never felt right. There was no spark, no connection. Instead, I'd be left sitting there, feeling like I was missing something, like I wasn't enough. And then there were the arguments. I don't have a love bank to draw from when we fight. There's no reserve of positive, loving moments to balance out the bad ones. It's all just negative. When we fight, all I can feel is the loneliness that's been building for years. I want to feel wanted. I want someone to hold me and tell me, it's going to be okay. But Megan doesn't do that. Her response is more along the lines of, life's tough, deal with it. I know it's her trauma talking. I don't blame her for that, and I don't hold resentment. But I've reached my limit. I can't keep living like this. I want to give love, but it's exhausting when it's never returned. And it's not just affection, it's everything. She rarely initiates conversations or makes time for me. I'm always the one chasing her. Even when it comes to intimacy, it feels like sex is the only connection we have left, and that's not enough for me. I've been trying to talk to her about these issues for over a year now. Every time I bring it up, she denies it. She'll say, "That's not true, I kissed you this morning," or "Look at other couples, they're not affectionate after all these years." She doesn't see the bigger picture. That's why I started the spreadsheet, not to threaten her, but to have concrete evidence of what I've been dealing with. And the data doesn't lie, the affection I get is almost always in response to an argument or a complaint I made the day before. It's a temporary fix, followed by weeks of nothing. When I showed her the spreadsheet, she was angry. I get it, no one likes seeing their flaws laid out in black and white. But does she understand the frustration I've felt after a year of trying to fix this? I didn't jump to divorce over a spreadsheet. I've spent a year fighting for this marriage. I could have walked away long ago, but I didn't. I tried everything I could think of. And now, I have nothing left to give. Someone once said I could just slap a spreadsheet together with zeros across the board for 90 days straight and call it a day. Let me tell you something, you don't know what it's like to go without affection in a marriage for that long. It eats away at you. And yes, I've got my fair share of issues and baggage from the past. I'm fully aware of that, and I'm doing the work to address it. But does Megan plan to confront her own issues and traumas? Not a chance, or at least that's the most likely outcome. And that's why I'm heading for divorce, so she can go on being detached with someone else if that's what she wants. Update number 3. I figured I'd drop in with another update to let you know where I'm at. A lot has happened since I started focusing on myself. I dove headfirst into something called shadow work. It's a process where you confront the hidden parts of yourself, the fears, insecurities, and traumas buried deep inside. I studied everything I could find about it, took my time to understand it, and then began facing my past, bit by bit. It was painful, like ripping open old wounds, but it was necessary. One of the first things I uncovered was this desperate, clingy side of me that was constantly craving love. I realized that deep down, I was still carrying around this wounded little boy who just wanted to feel safe and loved. For the first time, I understood that it was my job, not Megan's, not anyone else's, to give that child the unconditional love and protection he needed. It might sound strange, but I started talking to that inner child, reassuring him. I told him, I see you. I understand you. I've got you now. And something shifted. From that moment on, I stopped chasing Megan for affection. No more kisses, no more hugs, no sweet words or attempts to start conversations. If she wanted to engage, fine, but I wasn't going to initiate anymore. And you know what? I felt calmer and more secure in myself than I have in years. It's been 2 weeks since I stopped seeking her out, and she hasn't said a word about it. No complaints, no questions, nothing. That just confirmed what I already suspected about her attachment style. This newfound clarity has helped me connect the dots between my triggers in our marriage and the trauma I endured growing up. For example, Megan used to accuse me of being defensive and shutting down during arguments. It always felt like she was attacking me, and I'd either lash out or retreat. But through shadow work, I traced those reactions back to my childhood. My mom was incredibly critical, and my stepfather, well, he flat out hated me. He was physically and verbally abusive, constantly putting me on edge, making me hypervigilant. I spent my entire childhood trying to anticipate danger, and that carried over into my marriage. Reliving those memories was brutal, but it helped me understand why I am the way I am. I also forced myself to see things from my mom's and stepfather's perspectives, trying to understand the pain and trauma that shaped them. Doing that desensitized me to a lot of my old triggers. I even told Megan I was working on resolving the defensiveness she'd complained about for years. In the weeks that followed, there were so many situations where I would have normally lost my temper or shut down completely. But I didn't. I stayed calm, stayed present, and didn't let myself spiral. For the first time, I felt like I was truly breaking free from the grip of my past. And yet, despite all this progress, Megan hasn't changed much. She seems happier and less tense, but she's still the same distant person she's always been. Before I started this journey, I asked her if fixing these issues would bring back the loving, engaged woman I married in 2008. She said yes, but so far, I haven't seen any evidence of that. To be fair, there have been tiny moments. She hugged me for about 3 minutes one night and called me love after giving me a quick kiss another time. But that's it. And honestly, that's okay. Right now, my priority is healing myself. The most surprising part of all this has been the change in my daughter. Since I've become calmer and more confident, she's been so much happier and more affectionate. She wants to play with me all the time now, and I can feel how secure she is around me. It's like she immediately picked up on the shift in me, and seeing her joy has been one of the best things to come out of this process. As for my shadow work, I've moved on to another tough area: my stepfather's constant rejection. Growing up, every time I asked for something, whether it was going out with friends, grabbing a pizza, or even just a bit of spending money, it turned into a battle. He almost always said no, and when he did, it was tied to something I had supposedly done wrong. Those fights were relentless, and the hatred he directed at me nearly broke me. At one point, I even considered ending my life because of it. Reliving all of that has been rough, but it's given me insight into my marriage. Megan, in her own way, mirrors those dynamics. Whenever I ask for something, be it affection, time, or support, her default response is to turn it back on me, to make it about what I did or didn't do. I'm starting to see it all more clearly now, and as painful as this process is, I know it's the only way forward. I'm nearly done tackling one of the hardest aspects of my shadow work, those constant rejections from my stepfather and the ripple effects they had on my life. The feelings of inferiority, the crushing anxiety, and the rock-bottom self-esteem, they've been with me for so long that I didn't even realize how much they shaped who I was. But little by little, I'm uncovering something incredible, a well of self-esteem, grit, determination, and yes, even anger that's been buried deep inside me for years. I can feel it in the way I'm showing up in my marriage now. I'm not the same man I was before. I'm confident, strong, and more in tune with Megan's needs, even if she doesn't fully recognize or appreciate the changes yet. Over these past 2 weeks, I've felt a calm and serenity that I haven't experienced in a very long time. No arguments, no drama, it's been peaceful. But unfortunately, life isn't without its complications. As you know, we've been dealing with some stress related to our daughter, and sometimes, the tension in the house reaches a boiling point. A couple of days ago, we had one of those heated moments. Out of nowhere, Megan hurled verbal insults at me, really harsh words. But this time, I didn't shrink away. I stayed calm and told her flat out that this kind of behavior might fly with her street friends, but not with me. I'm her husband, and I didn't deserve to be treated like that. The very next day, things escalated again. She got so upset that she actually threatened to slap me. I wasn't scared, though. What I felt instead was a surge of anger, a strong, fiery desire to stand up for myself. I looked her in the eye and said, "Don't you dare. I won't tolerate this anymore. I'm not the same person I used to be, and I'm not afraid of you." It's been a whirlwind, to say the least. Life feels incredibly intense right now, with so many problems and changes happening all at once. Doing this shadow work has been painful, there's no sugarcoating that. But the results? They're undeniable. I'm finally starting to understand myself, piece by piece. My self-esteem is rebuilding itself, and it's reshaping the dynamics in my family in ways I never thought possible. Next week, I'm meeting with a lawyer. I need to understand exactly where I stand when it comes to a divorce, what it would mean for my daughter, our finances, and everything else. For the first time in 16 years, I'm no longer afraid of the idea of leaving or being left. That fear is what kept me stuck for so long, but now, it's gone. I'll wrap up with a couple of final thoughts. First, my healing comes first. Now that I'm starting to heal, I can see Megan's problems more clearly, and I think I could even help her if she was willing. But right now, I'm not in a position to expect anything from her or to try to fix her. My focus is on me, and I'm aiming to be at least 90% healed before I even consider explaining my transformation to her. Second, to all the people who criticized me for keeping that Excel diary, listen, it wasn't for her. It was for me. It helped me map out my flaws, insecurities, fears, anxieties, and triggers. It gave me a starting point, and for that, I'm grateful. Lastly, for those who've asked how I'm dealing with my trauma, there's no magic formula. Just me, a Moleskine notebook, and a pen. I've been using a series of 5 questions to guide myself through this process. 1. What am I doing right now? I write down exactly what's triggering me, how it's making me feel, and who's involved. I try to be as honest as possible. 2. What past experiences led to this behavior? This is where I explore the childhood trauma tied to the situation, what happened, the facts I remember, and how it all connects. 3. Why did this happen? I dig into the perspectives of the people involved, mainly my mom and stepfather. I try to understand their traumas and see things from their point of view. Once I do that, they stop being monsters in my mind and become flawed, wounded people. That makes it easier to have compassion and forgive them. 4. What did I understand? I reflect on the insights I've gained from answering the first 3 questions. 5. What do I want to say to myself? This is where I talk to myself, reassuring and comforting the part of me that's still hurting. I tell myself it's okay to feel what I feel, that I'm strong now, and that I've got my own back. Each time I go through this process, I feel a little freer. So, for now, the journey continues. If Megan decides she's fine with the way things are, then I know how this story will end. But if not, we'll see. Either way, I'm moving forward with calm and clarity, one step at a time. Update number 4. It's been another week, and I wanted to share an update on how things are going. I'll break it down into sections to keep it clear. 1. My healing process. The progress I've made in these past 7 days feels nothing short of incredible. For the first time, I've started to love and accept myself completely. After years of tearing myself down and calling myself all kinds of awful names, I stood in front of the mirror and said the words I'd been longing to hear my whole life: I love you. You are the most important person in my life. I love you exactly as you are, with all your strengths and weaknesses. These were the words I had always hoped to hear from someone else, especially my wife, but I've come to realize it was up to me to say them. And I did. In that moment, I felt like I'd become a man for the first time. I understood, deeply, that nobody was coming to save me. The responsibility for my happiness and my life lies with me alone. Now, when I have tough or sad moments because of my situation, I don't spiral into despair anymore. I'm there for myself. I console myself, lift my own spirits, and remind myself that I've got my own back. It's such a new and liberating experience, and for the first time in my life, I'm genuinely happy. I'm making progress so quickly because I'm clear about my issues, I'm willing to face my pain head-on, and I know exactly how to work through it. If things continue at this pace, I think I'll be done with this stage of healing in another week or two. 2. Relationship with my daughter. My daughter is picking up on the changes in me faster than anyone else. She sees that I'm stepping into my role as the leader of this family, and it shifted the dynamic between us in the most beautiful way. She started respecting me more, seeking me out more, and trusting me more. Watching her respond to my growth fills me with so much joy, and I'm falling more in love with her every day. It's also made me realize how much my own self-esteem issues were affecting her. Now that I'm healing, she's healing too. That alone makes all of this work worth it. 3. Relationship with others. I've stopped being a people pleaser. I don't feel the need to over-explain, sugarcoat, or go out of my way to make people like me. My interactions are now simple, direct, and confident, no fear involved. Every time I catch myself acting differently than I would have in the past, I feel this fire of self-esteem inside me, confirming that I'm moving in the right direction. It's a great feeling, and I don't even recognize the old version of myself anymore. 4. Relationship with my wife. As expected, things with Megan aren't improving. We're moving toward divorce, and I've been working closely with my lawyer to prepare for it. In my country, there are specific laws and nuances to consider, and I want to be fully prepared. Megan isn't handling the shift in power dynamics well, but the level of disrespect has decreased. I've made it clear that being yelled at or insulted is no longer acceptable. One day, she repeatedly brought up the idea of separating, saying things like, "We need to talk about going our separate ways," or, "The chances I gave you have run out." Each time, I calmly responded, "Okay, let's talk. I agree, we should go our separate ways. I need a real woman who loves me. I don't need to stay with you." I could tell she was watching my reactions closely, but by the evening, she stopped saying anything about it. A couple of days later, she brought up separation again, and I gave her the same response, "No problem." This morning, she seemed to change her tune. She put on makeup, came over, gave me a kiss, and said we should give the relationship another chance for the sake of the family. I understand what's happening here. Looking back, I can see why I ended up in this situation. When we met, I was an insecure 18-year-old who felt ugly, lonely, and miserable in my family home. I was desperate for love and connection, and Megan, with her beauty, filled that void. But now, I see the bigger picture. After relationships with men who mistreated her and dates with men who likely recognized her avoidant tendencies and walked away, she found me. I was the insecure good guy with a soft heart and idealistic dreams, someone who would pour out all my love without requiring much in return. In exchange, all she offered was her beauty and sex, without truly investing in or committing to the relationship. Realizing this hurt deeply, but I'm not angry at her all the time. Sometimes, I think about how broken I was back then and realize I played a part in this dynamic, too. But none of that matters anymore. My healing takes precedence. To take back even more of my power, I told Megan that I no longer want to have sex with her. I'm not going to let my mind or emotions be clouded by physical intimacy. What I need is a partner who loves, respects, and cherishes me completely, not just when it's convenient. So, that's where I'm at right now. The healing continues, and I'm moving forward with clarity and strength. One day at a time. Bye-bye.